All got it?
Mm-hmm.
I'll just check and make sure the microphone is on.
Clayton, hit that.
It's on.
What's today's date?
20.
No, it's not made for kids.
What are you going to put it up?
What do I name it? Church?
Taylor.
What do I name it?
Wednesday, July 28th. It's not even Wednesday, dude.
Yes, it is. Then you know it, since you know everything.
Don't take it out on me.
Well, stop acting the way you are.
I'm not doing anything. How am I acting?
Like that.
I'm not even doing anything bad. I'm just trying to help you. I'm just trying to help you.
Then be quiet.
Shut up.
No.
Stop doing it, too.
No.
I don't want to hear.
Go downstairs.
Shut up.
Go.
Shut up. I'm not leaving.
Go.
Get over here.
It's time to begin a Wednesday evening Bible study. It's good to see everyone tonight. Certainly do appreciate your presence. If you happen to be a visitor with us, we certainly want you to know how much we appreciate your presence. Invite you back each and every opportunity you have to be with us. As always, we consider you to be an honored guest. Our first song this evening will be 886, so we'll be turning to that. So Randy will be singing here in just a moment. We certainly want to continue to remember all those that we mentioned Sunday that's on the sick bed. Keep them in our prayers here as well as at home. A couple I want to add to that tonight. Brother Ronnie South, Ronnie's at home. He's having some problems with his foot. He can't hardly walk. So we will please remember Ronnie. Of course, keep our young people in your prayers that are at Maywood Camp. Keep them also, because I know it's just as hot up there as it is here. It's extremely hot here. Been out in today. I hope you've been extremely careful. I was telling Joan just now, I heard a radio announcer say we ride to work in an air-conditioned car, and most of us work in an air-conditioned office. We live in an air-conditioned home, and then we complain about how hot it is. So definitely, whenever we get outside, it's hot. You start sweating, build it to your car. So be extremely careful when you're out in this heat. Also, John and his family, they're on vacation this week, traveling the highways and byways, so keep them in your prayers. There may be others that I need to add to the list that I've overlooked. John, please let me know so we'll make that known. Don't forget Sundays or First Sunday Fellowship meal. Keep that in mind. And also August the 16th, ladies, keep that in mind. That'll be the third Monday. That'll be your fellowship together in Toro at 5:30 p.m. Keep that in mind as well. Is there anything else that I've overlooked that you need to mention? All right. The order of worship tonight, Brother Randy be leading or singing. Bill, will you do those in prayer? And I will. I think we're going to be here. Okay. Oh, here he is. I'm sorry. I keep forgetting to look up. So anyway, Clayton, you have the closing prayer tonight. Brother Randy.
886. First, second, last stanza, 886. Oh, Jordan, stormy banks, I stand and cast a wishful eye to gain a fair and happy land where my possessions lie. We will rest in the fair and happy land by and by, just across on the evergreen shore. Sing the song of Moses and the Lamb by and by, and dwell with Jesus evermore. Oh, the transporting rapturous scene that rises to my side. Sweet fields arrayed in living green, and rivers of delight. We will rest in the fair and happy land by and by, just across on the evergreen shore. Sing the song of Moses and the Lamb by and by, and dwell with Jesus evermore. Filled with delight, my raptured soul would here no longer stay. Oh, Jordan's waves around me roll, fearless I wash away. We will rest in the fair and happy land by and by, just across on the evergreen shore. Sing the song of Moses and the Lamb by and by, and dwell with Jesus evermore. Our brother Phil will lead us home. Father, man, back forth, life, life, birth, little while, faithful congregation. Then, look at also have some questions. Those are my
That's like this.
Well, I grabbed it up there. You don't think about that. But
Can you hear me? I have that we're on page 55 of our book. You know, as it's been mentioned already on several occasions, John had mentioned it, this book was written in 1971, which is what, 50 years, roughly 50 years ago, that it was written when the Winkler wrote the book. But I want to ask a question of it. 55, page 55. Do you think the things that the church is facing today are any different than what the church was facing 50 years ago?
Worse. I think it's worse.
Anybody else? You don't think it's facing anything any different? I want you to think back for just a minute in your own life. Most of us have experienced a lot of things because of our age and so forth. But 50 years ago, and one thing we're talking about here on the lesson we're working on now is getting young men to make gospel preachers. Think about a gospel preacher 50 years ago and a gospel preacher today. As a young man trying to want to make a gospel preacher, would you say it'd be easier on him today or easier on him 50 years ago? I agree, and I'm going to tell the reason why I agree with that is because 50 years ago, between the two of us, Sissy and I was making $2.50 an hour. We was making $1.25 an hour as minimum wage. Eugene got lucky and went to ITT, and I think he's making $1.35, $1.45. He got to go to work at a good place. I worked at a shirt factory, and she worked at a piano place. But we wasn't paying $2.87 a gallon for gas. We was paying, at that time, was paying 16 cents a gallon for regular, 17 cents a gallon for premium gas. But my point is young men that are looking or have the desire to go into the preaching the gospel are facing some things that wouldn't have to be faced 50 years ago. And that is to be able to make a living in order to have a family. It's up to the church. You know, there's not that many big congregations, nowhere close to as many small congregations that there are. And it's hard for a small congregation to sponsor a preacher with enough funds that he can take care of a family. So most of the preachers now, a big part of the preachers now are having to work 2 jobs in order to preach, and then work another job as well in order to support themselves. And then as Randy and Phil and I were talking, just the service started, look at what has happened to the church just in the last year and a half with this pandemic. When this thing got started, you know, they kept hollering, don't go to church. Don't go anywhere where that there's assembly of people. Stay away. Don't go. Stay away from crowds. Well, what did that do to the church? It caused people to start staying at home. Stay at home. Don't go out. Don't be out in crowds. Don't even. They didn't even want us to go outside of the home, period, if we didn't have to. Well, congregations started trying to do what they could do over the internet, through the web, worship to the best they could, because we couldn't assemble together. Some congregations even done worship out in their parking lot, let people stay in their car. And all kind of things were done just to try to keep worshiping as best as possible. Well, finally the pandemic supposedly let up a little. We were able to come back and start worshiping together. But did everybody come back? Yes, no. No, they didn't. Okay, now then, we're at a point here now. Now what's happening now? What are they starting to tell us now? That's right. They're hollering. They're starting to say the same thing again. We're going into what they call it, the 4th wave of a pandemic. You need to stay away from the crowd. Don't be where there's a bunch of people, and so forth. Randy said it the best. The old devil is really busy. He is really busy. When you think about what's happening, he's really busy. He's tickled to death. He's got people staying away, and that's just what he wanted to do. You know, the Bible tells us, forsake not to the assembling of ourselves together. We come together. And I know I'm bearing from the book, but there's some things that's on my mind because it's happening. You know, when we're not allowed to come together, then we don't encourage one another. By coming together and worshiping together, we encourage one another. That's encouragement. You know, on Wednesday night and so forth, you know, we've been busy during the week and all this, and we come together and we worship. We leave here feeling better than we felt when we got here. Because we come together and we worship together. We sing hymns together. We study from God's Word together. We feel better when we leave than we did before we got here. But old Satan, he's working overtime right now because he's playing havoc on the church. Am I wrong? Of course, as I look back over this past year, and a year and a half to me, the church has hurt more than it's hurt in a long time, just because of that. Just because of that. I mean, you know, and then if you watch the news, just like today, the CDC is changing their You know, you watch it this morning and they say one thing, you watch it in the morning and they say something different. Don't wear the mask today, and then tomorrow wear the mask. It's constantly changing. We don't, you know, we don't know what to expect. I think you're exactly right, and I've heard a lot of people that have been interviewed and talked to are saying the same thing. It's time now we've got to do what we think is best for ourselves. You know, we've tried doing everything they suggest and tell us to do. Has it worked?
You don't want to make it. This is time.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. You know, that gets back to what Mary just said. Those are decisions that each of us have to make for ourselves. You know, whether I'll do or whether I don't. But it's individual decisions that we have to make.
Some people have been that. I mean, I think they think
This is all true. Again, I'm sorry. Maybe Biden got a plan. Do you know what it is? Did he even tell you?
See what strange guys that now those come not working.
Again, they tell us every day something different. But in my opinion, this is really has hurt the church. You know, if you were a weak Christian, it was easy. I mean, you know, you stay away. But it's hard to get back into that good routine. Once you get out of the good routine, it's hard to get back into it. And it's made it extremely hard for the church to get people to come out and so forth whenever our government is telling people, don't stay at home, don't go, don't go and mingle with people. What do we do?
Maybe I'm listening to it.
I'm sorry?
Maybe I'm listening to that either.
You're right in a lot of cases. You're right in a lot of cases. But anyway, getting back to our lesson, and of course we're talking about the things that we need to do to encourage young men and also our young women. We're talking about the young men, and in fact, this applies to all of us. You know, as we've talked about, and you agree with me, we're all preachers. We're all teachers, just in different ways. I personally think that most new converts come from a one-on-one with someone, rather than, you know, we're taught from the pulpit. We hear the lesson. But most converts are taught one-on-one. We have an opportunity, you know, we have a window of opportunity, if we'll think about it, every week to say something, talk to someone. Questions come up. We get asked certain things about why do you this or why do you that. It's those opportunities that we have that come up every week that allow us to say something to somebody. Think about a song that was in our old hymn book that we used to sing. We don't sing it anymore. You never mentioned him to me. Think about standing in judgment line and someone saying to you, you never mentioned him to me. Well, we have that opportunity. It comes up. Those windows of opportunity come up. And we don't need to miss that opportunity when someone asks us something, or why do you believe this, or any question of that matter. We have an opportunity to say something to someone, and we don't know how that will resonate with that person. It may be 5, 10 years down the road, and that person converts. And it could be traced back or traced back to something maybe we said or something we did for that person. And I heard and it was right here several years ago, a lesson was taught on going out and talking to people and trying to get encouragement to come to church and that thing. But something he said that I've never forgotten. He said, you know, it's hard to go up to the door and knock on the door and talk to someone about coming to church. If they've got other needs that needs to be addressed first. If that person's hungry, that person's in need of something, truly in need of something. He's not out to listen to us. But if we go and we help that person and we try to help take care of their needs and so forth, they're going to be a lot more apt to listen to what we've got to say than they are if I just walk up to the door, knock on the door and say, I want you to come and worship with us. And yet he's in need of clothing, need of food, need of whatever. You know, our actions go a long, long way. And whenever we help someone and we show a person that we truly, truly care about them, then they're a whole lot more out to listen to what we got to say. When I try to talk to them about God's work and God, they're a lot more open to listen to. Would you agree with that? When we start trying to get young men to want to preach the gospel, our book talks about it starts at home. It does start at home.
Those are encouraging our souls to love and love.
That was my next point. You know, we can encourage a young man to become a preacher, but if he picks a spouse that is not as dedicated to want to preach the gospel as he is it going to work? I'm sorry. That's right. It's got to be a group. In other words, both of them have got to be dedicated. And when we think about, of course, first person comes to mind is Brad Young. Brad is in Central Florida, and he's doing a great work down there. And he's got the young lady he's married to is just as dedicated to it as he is. Ain't that what I said? What did I say? Huh? Well, y'all knew who I meant. Thank you, sis. But anyway, y'all know who I'm talking about. But anyway, and that's what it takes. It takes a team. It takes a team. That spouse has got to be dedicated. Think about the missionaries that we have come here that we're sponsored in heaven. Their wife is just as dedicated. They're working just as hard. They're just as dedicated. And you don't see that though that much. Because, you know, they're just not, and then Judy made a point too. They see, in many cases, and our book talks about this as well. Our heroes now are who? Is it the gospel preachers? Who's our heroes now? People are more, I'm sorry, John.
Media, social media.
Absolutely. These athletes, I mean, there's nothing, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with being an athlete, but they're not heroes, in my book. They're not heroes. They're,
Some of those films they used to put out, and I watched them. I know the bad thing out of the program. And they're done me more good than any preaching I could ever heard. Right, sure, that's
I know the films you're talking about. I ain't seen a group of those in a long, long time. We used to take them and go out and someone was with it, and we even set up some like small group sessions and showed those films you're talking about. They were really, really good.
church also they could have once a month or twice a year and
Those were really good. They really were good. A lot of good information in them. They were really good. But like I say, you know, we're making heroes out of athletes and movie stars and all this stuff. And it's like now if one of them speaks, you know, we're supposed to listen to them. They're an expert. The one thing, in my opinion, they're expert in is either playing a game of basketball or making a movie or something of that nature. Other than that, what are they expert in? You know, I personally, I've seen them doing all these things that are unbecoming, and yet people listen to them like they're God. And something else we need to remember too. These young men see preachers in many cases called moneymakers, greedy. Have you ever heard somebody say all he's in for is the money? You ever heard that said about one? All he's in for is what he can get. All he's in for is the money. But what do you think that does to a young man or a young lady when we say something like that? What do you think it does to them? You think it makes them want to become a preacher, a gospel preacher? You know, we encourage you or hurt on one hand, and then we turn around and maybe we make a discouraging remark to someone else, and they overhear us. Get back to the home. We teach them at home. We're trying to encourage them, but yet we make an off-cuff statement. What does that do to them? Does that encourage that young person or young lady? Does that encourage them? Or is that going to discourage them?
say something.
And then, too, we need to remember something else, y'all. In God's eyes, we're all equal. God is no respecter of person. No respecter of person.
Wouldn't you say that if a young man does want to be a preacher, he does want to preach the gospel, that he wants to do that because he feels it, he believes it, that's who he is. God. Things that come after pay and all that, it's going to matter less to him because he wants to preach the gospel. That's his call, that's his purpose. And it's our job at the church to motivate the young men to want to do that, for that to be their goal. And because I firmly believe if you do God's will, you live by His word. Word of God's going to take care of you. Regardless of how much money you make at one job or two jobs. We should be motivating them want to be preachers. Like, we'll use Clayton as an example. We should be motivating him, move in that direction. They want to be able to teach and preach. And that should be his motivation for the job should be that you want to do, you want to preach the Word. Not for any other reason other than it's a respectable and the most rewarding job you can have is to teach and to lead somebody to Christ. It doesn't matter if I made $100 a week preaching or if I could do it for free. Shouldn't that be our goal, is to motivate young people to want to preach, period?
Absolutely. We've got to motivate them, we've got to encourage them to do that, and especially for that person who's got it deep in their heart that that's what they want to do. But at the same time, it's our duty to see to it that if he wants to do that, that he has the means and so forth that he needs. And God tells us that. We're to support him not only with encouraging words, we're to support that person by our means as much as humanly possible, so he has the opportunity to do that. In other words, just because he wants to be a gospel preacher, we don't throw him out there and say, "Here, you preach." We're commanded to help take care of his means, that he has what he needs to take care of and be able to feed his family, to take care of his family. That's our duty. Not just put them out there. We've got to support them in that way as well, to make sure that they've got what they need, the means that they need to take care of their family and feed themselves. And that's what's so bad in many cases. We fall down sometime in our duty to take care and support them the way we should. But we got to support them from encouraging them, giving them every opportunity they can, and encouraging them to from the time they're little all the way up. And that's where Bible classes and all this comes in, is teaching them and encouraging them. And then, and it's the same way with all of us. We need to continually encourage one another, encourage each other, pray for each other.
I've been thinking about it. But we only have one number. That's what a lot of, and I think we have churches together. They may be 4, 5, maybe 6 get together, maybe on Sunday night, come in and have something just compressed.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And that's something that even Brother Winter talked about here, is to do every so often. Get as many young men as you can, bring them together, and let them present a lesson, do the different things, and encourage them. Well, talking about Clayton, y'all remember when Clayton first started, he was real quiet, and one thing we kept talking to Clayton. Every time I talked to him, I tell him, I said, "Clayton, done a good job. One thing, you need to talk like you're hollering at your sister. Speak up like you're hollering at Taylor, And if y'all know, what's Clayton doing now? Now he gets it, he opens up and talks. You know what I mean? All of us can see the growth just in Clayton. Just from him doing it and saying, "Do this," he talk louder or whatever. That's how a young man grows. Yeah, it would. Absolutely.
I say, a lot of congregations
That would be an excellent way to allow them to present lessons, lead singing, and carry on the whole thing. And at the same time, if one of them needs to be encouraged in a certain area, encourage them in that area, you've done a great job here, you just need to, do this and teach them. But anyway, and like I say, Clayton is a prime example, because I mean, he has just grown and grown, and just gets better and better. Any other comments? But anyway, what I was saying is, talking about we're all equal, God has no respect for person. We don't need to respect our preacher. We don't need to put unneeded burdens on him and expect things out of him that we don't expect out of ourselves.
If I see somebody
She said that if she was in the hospital and one of us came to visit her, she might not remember. But if the preacher came, she would remember.
But you see, that's a good example. What influence the preacher has, our influence it has, just like what she said. Preacher, his wife, and children, as a group, hold a very, very close connection. I think back to what the example that Carl said. He was not a preacher on Sunday morning, on Wednesday night. He carried that responsibility 24/7. He was a good motivator. And I think that I'm speaking to what Tommy was saying. That's what we look for. That's what was just. He was living by that example, motivating.
And too, the young men that are raising up in the church, they can learn a lot from knowledge, preacher and all. They can help them transition into that phase of their life too, I think. Because they've been down that path. That's a good step, I think.
Is a preacher's example supposed to be different than ours?
Well, he's an authority figure whether he wants to be or not. In your mind. Just like an elder.
You're exactly right. My question is, can we act different than he can? In other words, are we not supposed to set forth the same example?
We're bound by the same law.
Right.
And if he's holding that banner up high, it motivates you, makes you want to carry it. Just like I see you, and I see motivation. Like I'll give you an example. Whenever I give a coaching, I'm always my own worst critic. I always think I stumble over my words and I can't get my message across. But you know what makes me feel better? Just like that, when Sister Lynn, Miss Helen, Miss Mary, they come up to me and say, "You did such a good job." That building me, right when I'm thinking I don't need to do this, they come up to me and they tell me that, and that builds me up. Their example of encouragement makes me want to go, whenever I go to work the next day, I'm living off what their encouragement to me makes me want to put my arm. I work with a preacher at Coca-Cola. I work with him a lot, and he goes through a lot. People treat him different. He is the gospel preacher. They're tough on him. You wouldn't think people would mistreat preachers the way they do. And whenever I work with him, after the encouragement I receive here at the church, I put my arm around him and I encourage him right back. It's like I would if I run into somebody that's having a bad day, leaving work for Coca-Cola, you're gonna run into people have a bad day. Makes you want to say an encouraging word. We all inspire and all motivate each other. So, and we have some great shining lights that me a person.
You're exactly right. We're all, that's what we get talking about earlier, we're all to encourage one another. And we should expect more out of them than we expect out of ourselves. Because we're all the same. We're all the same in God's eyes. One of us is not better than the other. And I shouldn't expect him to live one standard and me to be able to live another standard. We're all the same. We're all supposed to set the same example. And that person out there in the world that sees us talking the talk, but if we don't walk the walk, it ain't gonna have any effect. So we've got to, we're all to set examples, not just the person who is up there in the pulpit, and it gets back to something else. Doesn't matter if he's preaching from the pulpit, standing here teaching a class, or whatever. It does not relieve me of my duty to study, to make sure that what I'm being taught is the truth. I'm not to take the word of whoever stands in front of me as the gospel. I'm to study to be sure. That's why it says, study to show thyself approved, rightly dividing the word of God, to make sure that the things I'm being taught and I'm listening to is the truth. Because when it comes Judgment Day, I'm going to be judged for myself, on what I did. I'm not going to be able to stand and say, well, Bobby Simmons told me this. Well, that ain't going to work.
That's true, but a lot of people though, they expect are the preachers that go to see they gonna get out.
Unfortunately, you're just exactly right. But that
And
don't,
then that makes it.
you're exactly right. But that don't necessarily make it. But that gets back to what I said, well, we're holding him to a different standard than what we expect of ourselves.
Well, that big full-time preacher, I think.
That's a different story too. Exactly right. Good class. Okay.
It's also quite
If you get paid,
we're supposed to do it. We don't even think well, our board say later. Not agree. What they do.
Do you ever read this? Look at her, yeah. You probably don't read much, do you? Scriptures up. So, he was trying to remember not to do this.
What's that? Oh, you looking something?
Let's see everything now, and I'm gonna let it start. It takes me 9:09. 9:09. Believe it or not, we're gonna talk a little bit about Noah. I mean, what about that? It was pretty impressive. Very. What we're gonna talk about tonight, the reason I'm bringing this up, a lot of our lesson books insinuate that Noah worked on the ark 100. What I'm going to cover tonight, opinions, some in-depth study on it, but I won't have scripture backing up what we found here. It says, how many years did Noah spend building the ark? Think Noah and construction of the ark, them things worked 120 years. But is this really the case? The only mention of 120 years, Genesis 6:3. Most of the stuff I'll have will be in Genesis 6. Not all of it, but most of it. And what would say that? I fear shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh. Yet his days shall be 100 years. Some think this is a reference to age man after the flood. Many people live much older than that after the man began to multiply. Even after 16 generations of Moses, people were living over 100 years. Outside of text of Genesis, the only other scripture which Noah preparing the ark is found in 1 Peter 3:20. Peter said, when once the divine long-suffering waited the days of Noah for the ark to be prepared, which a few, that is, 8 souls, were saved through water. Nothing here indicates the time frame of the construction of the ark. The logical conclusion of 120 years serves as the countdown to the flood. From the time God announced the coming of the flood to the time Noah entered the ark, 120 years. And this is quite profound that God would be telling those wicked and rebellious people they had time to repent. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intent of his thought of his heart was evil continually. The Lord was sorry that he made man on earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man, beast, creeping things, birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. This is Genesis 5, 6, and 7. All right, the very next verse, 6:8, says, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Again, we're reminded of God's plan. Genesis 6:13, and the end of all flesh has come to Lord. The Bible does not say how long it took. Several passages indicate it was not 120 years. For example, Noah was 500 years old when he started having children. Genesis 5:32. Shem had his first son, Noah's grandson, 2 years after the flood
equals 100. Genesis 11:10. This means Shem is 98 years old when the flood came. When we do the math, Shem was born when Noah was 502. So Jacob, let's look then the oldest, and Ham was Noah's youngest son. Genesis 9:24. When God gave Noah instructions to build the ark, it was not at the beginning of the 120-year count. At the same time, God told Noah that he, his wife, his 3 sons, and her wife go aboard the ark. Genesis 6:14-18. It is reasonable to assume Noah's sons were already born and old enough to have wives. They were only 100 years from the time Noah's first son was born until he entered the ark. Genesis 7:6-7. We allow 20 to 25 years or so for his sons to grow up, get married. Noah would have about 65 to 75 years to complete the construction on the ark. Some may argue different, but it wouldn't be unreasonable for Noah to have help from his 3 sons and have hired local hands. Certainly hope you got a little something out of it that I did finding it. We always want to offer the invitation if anyone here got a need with the church, be in your system. Come forward and stand in song.
And on that. There's a fountain reaches for you and me. Let us haste, oh, haste to its spring. 'Tis a fount of love from the source above, and he bids us all freely drink. Will you come to the fountain free? Will you come? 'Tis for you and me, thirsty soul. Hear the welcome call. 'Tis a fountain open for all. There's a living stream with a crystal gleam from the throne of life. Now it flows. While the waters roll, let the weary soul hear the call and forth freely go. Will you come to the fountain free? Will you come? 'Tis for you and me, thirsty soul. Hear the welcome call. 'Tis the fountain open for all. There's a rock that's cleft, and no soul is left that may not its pure water share. 'Tis for you and me, and its stream I see. Let us hasten joyfully there. Will you come to the fountain free? Will you come? 'Tis for you and me, thirsty soul. Hear the welcome call. 'Tis a fountain open for all. If you're visiting with us, we're certainly glad you come our way. Invite you to come back and worship with us each opportunity you might have. Our Our Sunday morning worship service begins at 9:30, Bible study at 10. Are there any other announcements that need to be made?
I appreciate everybody remembering me, Friday. I've got a procedure going on. So there's not anything to it much, and it's not, as long as it ain't on me. When it's on you, it is. But anyway, that's all I mentioned.
There's nothing else,
Clayton,
Clayton, will lead us in our closing prayer.
Pray for a deep otherwise. Pray for our elders. God. We pray for the pastor, Father, for the pastors. Pray for that grows in spirit, truth. Pray for a song. Pray that you and pray for the sick. Last time. We pray that we will resolve.
Good.